Comic books are often criticized for being overly complicated and convoluted, and while I think that might be a bit unfair, it's examples like this that seem to ruin the medium for everyone. This is Hawkman. He's been in several mainstream DC productions, including Justice League Unlimited and Legends of Tomorrow, but there's actually been about 4 or 5 different Hawkmen out there, and each one is about as confusing as the last. Let me explain. The first to bear this title was named Katar Hol, an archaeologist who discovered that he was the reincarnation of the Egyptian prince Khufu. Using a mason belt made out of the powerful nth metal that allowed him to manipulate gravity and fly, along with some artificial wings to help him steer, he fought crime as the first Hawkman. Shortly thereafter, Carter bumped into a woman named Shira Saunders, who he immediately recognizes as his reincarnated lover. This is the woman who would later become the hero Hawkgirl. The two of them eventually get married, and they had a child that ended up living a life that's almost as complicated as his parents. Let's not get into that for this episode. Hawkman was a founding member of the Justice Society of America, alongside some characters that you might already know about, like Jay Garrick, aka the original Flash, and Alan Scott, aka the original Green Lantern. I mention those last two because of one important point. When the Silver Age of the mid-50s started, DC started rebooting their characters with most of the heroes that we know and love today. All of the Golden Age characters and adventures were retconned to have taken place on an alternate universe called Earth 2. This is also what happened to Katar Hol and paved the way for the second Hawkman. This was Katar Hol, an alien police officer from the planet Thanagar. He and his partner/wife Shira Hol were sent to Earth in order to track down a shape-shifting criminal. After catching the bad guy, the Hawks decided to stay on Earth to research human police methods, and Katar adopts the name Katar Hol as a secret identity. A nice nod to the Golden Age incarnation. Later on down the road, Hawkman joined the Justice League of America, and for a while, things were pretty simple. Katar Hol was on Earth 2, while Katar was on Earth 1. Well, that is until Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, which merged parts of the entire multiverse into one singular universe. This led to both Hawkmen suddenly existing at the same time on one planet. Don't think about it too much, because Carter and the Justice Society were almost immediately thrown into limbo, where they were forced to endlessly fight in the Norse Ragnarok for the rest of eternity, making things at least a little easier for now. What's important is that this left Katar as the only Hawkman. Finally, this whole mess was resolved, until Hawkworld came out and ruined it again. See, the post-Crisis DC Comics started launching books that retold the origin stories of many characters, such as Batman Year One. Hawkworld made their origin darker and grittier, turning the Thanagarians into a brutal war-conquering race. This title even dealt with themes of corruption by making the criminal that Katar tracked to Earth into a corrupt collie. People really liked Hawkworld, and everything would have been great if it had taken place in the past. That's right, Hawkworld was taking place in the modern DC universe, so now there are 2 Thanagarian Katar Hol space cops. How did DC explain this? The Silver Age Katar Hol was actually a half-human, half-Thanagarian sleeper agent named Fel Andar, who came to Earth, took up the name Katar Hol Jr. in order to pretend to be the Golden Age Katar Hol's son, and became Hawkman. Once the new Katar arrived, Fel Andar revealed himself and was more or less written away to make things less complicated. Oh yeah, and the Golden Age Hawks are now back from their fight in Limbo, so now we have 2 Hawkmen again! It's around this time they also tried to flesh out the new Katar's history by revealing that, like Fel Andar, he was also half-human. That and both Carter and Katar were avatars of some Native American hawk spirit, but neither of those plot points really went anywhere. Moving on. Up next was the book 0 Hour, which mainly existed to fill in DC's plot holes, so naturally, the Hawkmen were prime targets. One of the biggest changes in the wake of 0 Hour was that both Carter and Katar were fused together into one super mega hawk god thing. Oh, and they were also fused with the Golden Age Hawkgirl and a literal Thanagarian hawk god, but nobody seems to want to talk about that. Now, there's only one Hawkman, the hybrid hawk thing that ended up being a super brooding and angsty version of Katar Hol, now with natural wings, because comics. At this point, DC agreed that Hawkman was too confusing, so with the help of the heroes Arion and Martian Manhunter, he just goes away into the realm of that Native American hawk spirit that we mentioned earlier. Enter comic book legend Grant Morrison. He started working on a Justice League of America book and wanted a new version of Hawkman, but DC vetoed that decision because of how convoluted his history was. You know that things are bad when a character is so confusing that they won't even let Grant Morrison of all people touch it. As a result, Morrison made the Angel Zuriel, who you might as well just call totally not Hawkman. Yet, since he has no real connection to the previous Hawks other than his editorial origins, we won't really discuss him in this video. Of course though, Hawkman had had to come back to life at some point, and he did. The hot girl at the time was summoned to a pretty destroyed Thanagar by some priests to use her connection with Katar in order to bring him back to life and save the day. Now, despite the fact that this is a Thanagarian ritual that took place on Thanagar, Katar was not resurrected. Katar Hol was. But it's okay, because he has all of Katar's memories too. Sure. Why not? This version of Hawkman continued on for a little while until he's killed by some alien manhawks and he's replaced by a guy named Charlie Parker. Charlie was originally introduced in the 70s as a Hawkman fanboy, but was later retconned and reintroduced as a deadbeat who was trained by Katar Hol. He became a member of the Teen Titans as the hero Golden Eagle, and he was killed by a member of the Wildebeest Society in the storyline Titans Hunt, but then he came back to life because comics. When Katar Hol died, Charlie took over as the all-new Hawkman and even revealed that he was Carter's son. This lasted for about one whole issue, because when Charlie tried to force himself onto Hawkgirl, he revealed that he was actually the son of Fel Andar, and that it was him that pulled all the strings to have Carter killed. Yet it didn't work, because Hawkman was in fact not dead and kicked Charlie's ass. So yes, Hawkman seemingly died, was replaced, had his protege turn into a supervillain, and came back from almost dying in the span of less than 5 issues. Now thankfully we are almost done. In Blackest Night, the Hawks are killed in the very first issue, resurrected as Black Lanterns, and at the end of the book, they're resurrected again as White Lanterns. To make things better, they're also free from their cycle of reincarnation. Now they have a role to play in the Brightest Day event, but literally everything we have talked about in this video was rendered null and void because Flashpoint happened and reset the entire DC universe into the New 52. Things are much easier with the reboot. Hawkman is just Katar Hol, but now with nth metal armor that's bonded to his skin. Ironically, the simplest version of the character is also one of the least interesting. But for the purpose of this video, we're not going to talk about his book, but instead, we're going to end off with this tidbit. There was a super long event called Future's End that showed what the future of the New 52's universe would look like in about 5 years. It led into a very mediocre event called Convergence that dealt with intersecting multiverses, including, you guessed it, the pre- and post-crisis universes. Because of the multiverse shenanigans, we got this picture that shows off the entire Hawkman kerfluffle front and center. So, will this continuity nightmare ever end? Only time will tell. Most likely not. So, which Hawkman origin do you guys think is better? The reincarnated Egyptian or the alien space cop? Click to cast your vote or tweet me at TrailerDrake. If you want to know more about how crazy DC's continuity is, then just click that annotation right there to check out the history of every single Flash. Also, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Okay, thanks, bye!